Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Hey, we're making our way through a series that looks at how could we neighbour well. We've got a sense as a church that we're called to be together, to grow together, and to seek gospel renewal. That's the work that God does to change things, which is positive work. And last week we talked about how everyone carries a level of hurt. That's kind of partly what it is to be human. And there's really times when it's helpful to talk about that. But as we were talking about it, and the comments at the end, somebody spoke up and talked about their own setting and talked about the importance of thanking God, of recognising more. So this morning we're going to do something slightly different. Now, I've asked some volunteers to help me. I've got some sheets of paper and some chalk. Sheets of black paper, and I'd love everybody to have a piece of black paper and some chalk. Okay, I would request, please do not draw with the chalk on the chairs or the floor. There was one famous service where I let kids loose with chalk because I had done this at another church, and at the end of the day it just vacuumed up beautifully. And they drew all over the floor, and it didn't vacuum up. So I think these carpet tiles are better, but let's not test them. Why I'd like you to have a piece of black paper and some chalk is normally when we draw something, we have a white background and we draw on it with black. But telling you now, the point of this morning's message is to pay attention to the light. And I would like us to be thinking, I'd like you to be thinking about the light in your life. And the invitation with chalk is to draw the light. Now this is a squiggle. It's not me drawing this light, just to show you the chalk on the paper fits pretty nicely. It doesn't rub off brilliantly, so if you think you can do it all and then rub it off and start again, well, once you've got some light on there, a little bit of light's going to stay. And there's some meaning to that for us. Pay attention to the light. And so while I'm talking, you have full permission to daydream and to draw, or to sit back and think, what would I draw? Where is there light in your life? And I'm going to talk a bit about Scripture and some of the ways we look at how light works in our life. And by the end, there'll be a song at the end, a reflective song. I'd love to have up here some of the stuff you've drawn, and with any luck, I'll have it up on the wall before next week, so you can come and have a look and see what light has looked like in other people's lives. Make sense? Sound all right? I may also play with the lights a little bit because I can, and so if it gets dark, don't freak out. Nothing awful's going to happen. No one's going to leap up behind you and say boo, and if you're someone who wants to do that, please don't. Okay? So I'm going to start by lowering the lights again because I can. The Bible tells the story of creation a couple of times in Genesis and also in John, and in it God creates the heavens and the earth is formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. It starts in dark. Now, if you've already got your piece of paper and you're not midway and you're happy to do this, try closing your eyes for a moment. It's a funny thing. If you do this in a cave where there's no natural light, it's really strange because you can't see anything, and opening and shutting your eyes looks pretty much the same, and we're not in that place. Have we mostly got the paper out now? Yep. Okay, so look, I'm just going to turn off the lights for a mo. So if you close your eyes, breathe in for a moment, breathe out. Can you see anything? Now, in light conditions, you can usually see the glow of your eyelids. It's kind of weird, but you can. And like I say, actually, if you go to a place where there is absolutely no natural light, what they say is if you close your eyes and you just wait there for a little bit, or even with your eyes open, your brain will start making up light for you. You'll get kind of retinal flashes because we are so wired to want light. Where there is no light, we will find a way to have it. That's how we are. So if you've done that, you've got that sense of, let's add a candle into the mix. You can open your eyes. There, that's better, isn't it? When we built this space, one of the things that worried us was how dark and cave-like it might feel. And because I know you want to draw, I'll give you some low light. We love the light. We feel better on a sunny day. He whiti te rā, it makes us feel good. And even just a candle makes a difference because the light shines in the darkness and the darkness has not overcome it. There's a Māori whakatauki. Anei tātou nā ko te pō, ana tātou nā he rā ki tua. Here we are in the night, but the day is on its way. And John spends some time exploring the differences between light and darkness. So part of our worship today is to draw on the paper some light, to pay attention to the light in our life. But let's consider the darkness for a moment. The Jews used to describe light and darkness as a battle between evil and good. Plato, for the philosophers amongst you, talked about a cave as a way of describing how we kind of live in darkness and we're looking for light. And for John, darkness is being away from God. And he says, actually, some people prefer it. So that famous verse that gets quoted, "For God so loved the world, he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life," carries on that God did not come to condemn the world. And it carries on. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. There's part of us that is more comfortable in darkness. It's less revealing. If you want to run a nightclub, you do not want to have lighting like this. Where's High? No one's going to come and dance in the mosh pit if this is the lights. Yet we are more comfortable if the attention is not on us. Sometimes people love the darkness. John carries on, "Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light so it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God." Light reveals, shows you what is going on. Sometimes it's too much. Oops, I've missed it. Timothy talks about God living in unapproachable light. The weird thing about light is we don't actually see it. What we see is we see by it. We see what the light shines off. Apparently this, I'm no physicist, but this is black paper, right? And why is it black? Because it's not reflecting back to you colour. It's an absence of colour rather than the colour. It's darkness. And when Jesus talks about being the light of the world, I wonder if part of that is he's also how we see. And he says, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." For the Jews, one of the languages they used for this was light was a way that you travelled. And you may not get this, but occasionally I go up on the Port Hills to show how unfit I am. And in winter, that's at night, and you have these lights, and these LED lights, they're stunning. Do you know they're one design fault? Because the old halogen lights, when they ran out of light, it just gradually get darker and darker and darker, and you'd get this pale halogen thing. The LED lights are go, 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 stop. And you do not want to be on the Port Hills on a track that's really bouncy and suddenly have your lights stop. All of a sudden, it's not so much ride by light, but fall off by light. And very quickly you're walking by absence of light. We need light to see where we go. In Isaiah, they talk about the people walking in darkness have seen a great light, writing about the Christ that was to come. But if we're going to walk by light, there are some conditions. Light has something to do with relationships. In 1 John, John writes, "This is the message we've heard from him and declare to you. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. If we claim to have fellowship with him and yet walk in darkness, we lie and do not live out the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his son, purifies us from all sin." And because he knows that probably some of us, when we hear this or read it, are going to think of the bad things we've done. He immediately talks about, here's how you confess. Yep, to deal with that. But what I want you to note is that to walk in the light for John says, well, if we're doing this, we will have fellowship with others. There's something about light and relationship. If you're wanting to live in the light, to walk in the light, you need to pay attention to the relationships that you have. In fact, he goes a bit further. Anybody who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or sister is still in the darkness. So light is so relational that if you're being consumed by hate, you can be pretty confident this is not a light thing, this is a darkness thing. Now, we love the metaphor of light in the church. We quite like this one, Lighthouse. You know the song, My Lighthouse? I really like that song. It hasn't always been our friend, this metaphor, because it kind of suggests that we might own the light. It's ours, and we are the bright ones going out there, and it has a tendency to ignore that at best we reflect the light of God to others. And in fact, when James writes about it, he has this comment, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. Which suggests there might be other lights around besides just the ones that you're carrying. I know it's a gimmick, but who couldn't? We are reflectors of the light. Some theologians say that be made in the image of God is to reflect the image of God. So if you look at it this way, Christ shines light on you, and you can choose to shine it, to reflect it to others. For God, who said, let light shine out of the darkness, has made his light shine in our hearts. So, to recap, there's light and darkness. Jesus comes as light. It's deeply relational. So it's not just truth. We tend to think of it as truth, but there's a strong relationality built into this, because John says when we're hating, when we're in this other space, we're not about light. It's got something about how we connect to other people, and it reveals what's there, which is the uncomfortable part, because it reveals darkness. Light shows us, the glow of our TV screens shows Russia invading Ukraine, killing thousands. Shows us North Korea rattling its nuclear missiles. Shows us kids ram raiding in Auckland. Light shows us, was when I moved out of this, when we were rebuilding the church and I moved out into the office outside, portacoms outside, I got to see the drug deals taking place. Light shows us what is going on. And not all that is going on is light. Some of it is awful. There are structural injustices and cruelty and pain and hatred and mistrust. We have darkness to spare, and it can feel really overwhelming. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Light reveals what's there, which at times is a mixed blessing. I read through the review of Arise Church, and there's some awful stuff in it, but the good news is, okay, now it's revealed, they can do something about it. You can't fix things until you know. It's probably not a surprise that we're told that people avoid darkness if they're carrying stuff they don't want to be seen, to avoid light. Christians are supposed to be people of the light, children of the light, children of the day. So pay attention to the light in your life. That's what I've asked you to do with this exercise. Where is there light in your life? Hopefully you have something which would indicate Christ shining in. But where is there light? I had the luxury of meeting up with Sean Hudson. A number of you know Sean Hudson. He's been working in an unnamed country. And he was just full of spark. He's loving what he's doing. Actually, his wife's loving what she's doing. And it was so obvious. Partway through, I just had to say, look, it's so nice to see the spark in your eye, to see there was so much light in it. Pay attention to the light. If you're finding there's not any, look around, there'll be some. and I think you can trust the light. I think this is the thing that followers of Jesus have that is unusual. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. If you're working in another country, hopefully it won't happen here, it's not uncommon for people to approach you for a bribe. If you just pay this money, this is going to happen. So I am told of a Christian who is working in Africa in a business that builds boats for the use in Lake Victoria, and he said he's regularly approached by local officials who say, you just need to pay this fine or this bit. And he said the thing you notice is the request is always made in secret, and it's never written down. So he looked at John 3:20-21 and said, okay. So he'd say to the official, listen, I don't know much about these kind of payments. I'd just like to get the ambassador or the management to get this documented. Shall we just, let's go down to the police station and, write it up, and then I'll give you the money. He said, it's amazing how often the request goes away. Because darkness doesn't like to be brought into the light. You can trust the light. In the time of Jesus, the thing that makes me uncomfortable is the people who thought they had the light sorted were the Pharisees. And they did. They loved Jesus. They worshipped at the temple. The only trouble is, in most of the encounters you see with Jesus, they are using the light to act as a fence. So they're saying, I'm sorry, you can't heal that person, it's the Sabbath. Sorry, you can't eat with that person, they're a bad person, they're a tax collector, they're a sinner. Their line, what light they have, they are using as barbed wire. Lots of rules and more rules. And in response, how does Jesus respond to this? The statement of, you can't go there, you can't do this, you can't, because that's not how light is. Jesus' consistent response is one of a heart. He says consistently, oh, this good news, it's also for you. For you, the sex worker who wouldn't be welcome. For you, the unclean person. For you, the outsider. This light is for you. Come in. He is constantly using light to include. Now, I find that slightly troubling because that's not always the case for us. That church sometimes, we do have lots of rules, and I can't say that rules aren't helpful. They are. We want character, and if you've got kids, then kids need to, and yet, I worry that sometimes we use our character to exclude people. Well, what have we said? What I've said has been, God is light, but light has relationship involved in it. That when you're thinking about light in your life, think about the other people. We've noticed that James said, pretty much anything good comes from God, so pay attention to the light. We've noticed that the Pharisees, on occasion, are using light to try and, as a barrier, as a wall, and that Jesus in response is welcoming others.